All right, let's get started, everybody. It is March 14th. This is your weekly community meeting. The purpose of this meeting is for SIGs around the project to sync up on what's happening around the Kubernetes community. Quick reminder that we are streaming this meeting in YouTube, and as always, with any of our events, the code of conduct is in effect. And we're also recording this on and making the archive available on YouTube. So if you say something, it will be archived forever. We have a demo today from Daniel Messer that's going to be doing automated day two operations using operators. And then we're going to go into release updates with SIG Beard. Welcome back. And then we have three SIGs going today: SIG Architecture, SIG VMware, and SIG Multi-Cluster. And with that, Daniel, are you online? I had not seen him join earlier. So with that, if he shows up, we'll kick back to it. Aaron, are you comfortable just going now while we wait for the demo?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Aaron of SIG Beard. This is your weekly 114 release update. This is week 10. This week's cat t-shirt is my hope for the release, like a gigantic cat in the clouds blowing out little tiny cat bubbles, all purring gently. It will be fun and amazing. So let's talk about the release notes. Let's talk about the fact that I did not get slides done this week. I kind of fell ill with something resembling the flu or strep, and my release team stepped up and did a phenomenal job. So I think I may have called out some specific people in shout outs, but well and truly, the entire release team really stepped up and have greatly improved the state of things this week as compared to last week. So before I dive into the specifics of that, a number of people have been really freaked out that if they merge their PR right now, it's not going to get into 114. That's not how code freeze works. The reason code freeze exists is that PRs that land right now are guaranteed to get in 114. You're going to have to start worrying about cherry picking PRs into the 114 branch once we hit code thaw, which at present is scheduled for Tuesday, March 19th. So that's Tuesday of next week. Beyond that, the next deadline you want to worry about is a cherry pick deadline of Thursday, March 21st. That's the date by which, oh, by the way, both of these are end of day Pacific time. By that time, we want to accept no more changes unless 100% super strictly absolutely necessary. This is because we want to give the release time to actually soak over the weekend. Give it a couple days, really run it through its paces, so we can decide whether or not it's ready to go out the door on Monday. I should have that date. I think it's March 26th. Don't quote me on that. So in this release, there will be 31 enhancements. I'm typing and fixing. I can't because they're too long. And the biggest concern this past week has been
Sorry to
CI
interrupt,
signal.
Aaron.
I apologize if my internet connection.
Yeah, can you kill your video to see if that helps? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so CI signal has been our biggest concern this week. We've had a number of tests that have been flaking or continuously failing. And one of the things that concerned me specifically was that a lot of this flaking and failing, it was unclear whether or not the move to Golang 112 helped us out with that or not. So from a scalability perspective, it seems like Golang 112 has passed both the performance and the correctness tests and did not impact the performance negatively there. However, it appears as though, thanks to the detective work of Lubomir and Liggett and Dims and Justin, Santa Barbara, and some others. I'm sure I'm leaving names out. Seems like there's maybe a bug somewhere in Golang 112 around, I think, sync.once, which was causing some of the upgrade tests to flake and fail and was causing a couple resource leakages. So this is why the diff resources test was failing in upgrade tests, but not in the master blocking jobs. So I'm talking about this one the most because where we're at today is we'd really, really like to stay on Golang 112. So we asked very nicely if the Golang team could cut a new patch release because we believe there is a bug fix in Golang at the moment that would address what we are running into. They said yes. We hope to see that patch release land either today or tomorrow. When that lands, there are a couple different PRs we will need to open up to make all of this happen, and hopefully we can see a signal on whether or not this has fixed our issue with Golang 112 by Friday or Monday. If things push on a little bit further than that, we're going to consider pushing code thaw back by a couple days because we believe it is extremely important to stay current with Golang here. So we're doing everything we can to try and make this happen. If we discover it does not fix our problems, we will most likely revert back to Golang 1.11.5, and we're working on a plan for that. Separately from that issue, we've noticed that there's an ingress test that's consistently failing and has been for a couple, for like the past week and a half on the master branch and the 114 branch. There's a PR outstanding to fix that. It's linked in the meeting notes. We're going to be pinging approvers to get that landed. There's also a PR to hopefully stabilize subpath on mount flakes in some of the upgrade tests. We have significantly pruned down issues and PRs at this point. Any PR that's open, we believe it's critical that it land in this release, and we're actively making sure that it's progressing forward. If new PRs are mysteriously appearing in the 114 milestone, we're going to be asking why. We're specifically looking for things like what enhancements does this PR tie to, or what bug does this PR fix, preferably with an issue that describes why it is important that it land right now, as opposed to the next patch release of 114 or in 115. Most of the issues that are now outstanding in the milestone appear to be umbrella issues or tracking issues or issues related to our sundry test failures and flakes. We believe there are no more issues related to outstanding work. So whereas for a couple days there, my release status, my traffic light, like red, green, yellow status for the release was red, we've moved back to yellow today, given the great cooperation of the Golang team and the general progression of the CI signal from red everywhere to at least a little more green in places, less continually failing jobs, and the flake rate has gone down. Any questions?
We have about 2 minutes for release questions if you have them.
Okay. Just to reiterate, we're getting pushier now because we really are trying to burn down. If you feel like something has gotten kicked out or pushed out in error, it's time to come talk to us. So we have our burn down meetings daily. They're at 10 a.m. Pacific, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They're at 8 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday, Thursday. And we're also active on our Slack channel. But we're now entering the point where we kind of need to talk some things through and use the exception process if it seems like it's really urgent. Cool. Thanks for everybody's help.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Welcome back. All right. We are moving on to SIG updates. And first is going to be SIG Architecture with Mr. Matt Farina.
Hello. I can start by sharing my screen here to all right. Can you all see the deck?
Looking good.
All right, fantastic. The first thing I want to talk about is that SIG architecture is making changes. For a long time, we've done a lot of talking and not as much stuff. And so today I want to kick off by talking about some of the changes that we're trying out in SIG architecture to make us more sustainable and healthy and all of that good stuff. Because I think it's important for anybody who wants to come engage. In the past, if you came, you might have been involved in debates or heard debates. And a lot of the active work wasn't talked enough about. And so we're highlighting more of that. And I'm going to talk about what's changing and even how people can get involved in that. And so in reality, the reason we're re-envisioning SIG architecture is because there were things we could do better, right? We were very, very centralized. If Jace did this wonderful thing where he actually looked at the different sub-projects and then looked at the number of people involved in being active in all of it. It came down to about 9 total people doing most of our work. And some of those people were approaching burnout. And so there are better ways to handle that and to scale it. We don't have a leadership succession plan, right? Because we don't have enough people. They're doing a lot of things. And the lack of pipeline for new people. It's almost like you get into some of those leadership positions and then you hold on to them, and we're not building up that next set of people. And of course, we had a little bit of a failure to make decisions because the default was to not make a decision, which is stagnant. And we would sit there having maybe debates where at the end of it, we did not have clear outcomes. And so we're working to fix that. Because that's a problem. And so we revisited what is the purpose of SIG architecture? And this is taken from the charter. We maintain and evolve the design principles of Kubernetes and provide a consistent body of expertise to ensure the architectural consistency over time. And so by having that with a small set of people doing a whole lot of work, we're not able to do that effectively enough. And so we change things up. And we started with the project values. And a lot of this that I'm going through, Jace put together in a wonderful presentation he gave to SIG architecture a little while ago. But he really pulled us into the project values. And as the link here says, this is the whole Kubernetes community, not just SIG architecture. And here we pulled out 3 of the values. Distribution. This kind of makes sense. We build distributed systems. Having 9 people centralized doing a lot of the work doesn't really do that. Inclusion, is better than exclusion. And that means including a whole lot more people. And of course, evolution. We evolved the design of Kubernetes, and it's come a long way in the last couple of years. We kind of need to evolve SIG architecture to get better at all of the things we need to do. So I'm going to break down each of these in a little bit more detail. For distribution, we want to move from centralized gatekeeping to documented guidance, right? So that way you don't have to track people down to necessarily gatekeep everything and to make sure everyone who's doing something is following the right patterns. It's documented, it's easy to find, and it's clear. We want a clear structure and standards and process to do things. And we want a lot of that done in our sub-projects, which I'm going to highlight in a minute, because those sub-projects are a great place for groups of people who are actively working on something to get together, work it out, and that kind of thing. We want to limit our discussions on to managing and scaling the processes in the projects more than going off and waxing poetic all the time. And then a lot of what we're going to do is we're going to focus on reporting out on this work to the community and, of course, inviting everybody in. On the inclusion front, really, in this community, leadership is earned. And we want to call out those leaders and look at the people who are doing certain bits of work and rewarding that. And a great way to see who's got the authority and responsibility for something is to look in the owner's files. And of course, work on those owner's files over time to make sure the right people are in there who are active. A lot of our topics we're now going to start doing on our mailing lists or in the appropriate CAPs, because in the meetings when we go and talk, that's happened in a certain time zone with certain people who come. And, there's lots of folks who are in other parts of the world who may be able to give great insights, but can't make our meetings. And then there are people who like to take time and think things through, not have something just show up at a meeting and be talked about. And when they think things through, they can give fantastic feedback and build on each other. And we want to have those opportunities and include those people and their ideas in those conversations. And so that's one of the things that we're going to start to do. So the SIG architecture mailing list is going to become much more important. and so will the conversations on the KEPs. And we want to focus on solving the requests that come into SIG architecture and actually giving it an actionable output and clearly documenting that to the people involved. And of course, then there's the evolution of it. We want to cultivate the next generation of leaders. We're talking about mentoring and shadowing, making sure each of our sub-projects is in a good, healthy shape, and giving people the ability to onboard with it. And we're also working with other SIGs in engagements to kind of help cultivate leaders who can take ownership and know how to go through this process. And then some of our projects are a little understaffed right now. As I said, there were like 9 people doing everything. And so we want to identify and create those missing roles, find the people who would be interested in those, and help get them into those roles and help them be successful at it. Because we've got people who are wearing a lot of hats. They can mentor, they can guide people to take some of those hats from them eventually after they've learned how to do those things. SIG Release is great at showing an example for this, and they're helping us through this process. So what have we done in all of this? Because I talked about what we want to do. Here are some of the things we've actually done so far in the process. We transferred the KEP process to SIG PM. That actually just happened formally, even though we've been talking about it for a while. And so SIG PM is going to take on evolving that process. We updated our charter to reconcile with the new path. We moved our meetings to every other week because if we're actually doing a whole bunch of work and then reporting out on it, it turns out we don't have to get together and talk face-to-face nearly as much. We can use mailing lists and things like that. We've scheduled follow-ups to help us with the transition. Tim St. Clair is going to come and help us talk about running with federated sub-projects. And in the hour after this one, Paris Pittman is going to talk to us about mentoring and how to do that stuff and teach us her wise ways here. We're going to start building the sub-project teams up. And we're starting the API review shadowing already to bring people in and teach them how to go through that process so they can help pick up some of that work that needs to be done. So this is some of the practical steps we're doing. But along the way, we have done other things, right? So I can't just talk the whole time about it when we talk about what we've been doing. I do want to touch on a few of the other things that we've been doing over the last quarter since we last talked here. And granted, in that time, we had December, which like everybody took off. If you look at the stats, you just see this giant dip in there, including the conference, KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. But in there, we also talked about how we worked on untested dark code. And our guidance for that is we really want everything to be tested now that's coming in. We want to reduce that amount of dark and untested code so more things are tested to give us some better signal. Aaron, props to this. We've talked a lot about KEPs, and Aaron pushed forward, and we talked a lot about it in SIG architecture, making every new feature that goes into Kubernetes 1.14 a KEP with upgrade, downgrade, and test plans to really think through these parts. Aaron's driven a lot of that, but a lot of that conversation has happened in SIG architecture. The scope of Kubernetes. Where does Kubernetes end so other things begin? And granted, there's some gray area, and we can always revise this process through normal pull requests and process and discussions. But that's actually documented now in the scope of Kubernetes, and that was merged, I think, last week. And of course, we've worked with Windows, SIG Windows, towards GA on Windows nodes, which, fingers crossed, will go out in 1.14. How can you contribute? So there's a whole bunch of you wonderful folks here in community meeting, listening to me talk about all of this stuff. And we really do want to onboard people into roles and responsibilities and just some actual fun work here. At least I think it's fun. And so we've got 3 sub-projects, and here's kind of what we're doing and looking for. If any of these are interesting to you, please reach out to me or one of the other co-chairs. We are happy to help onboard you. The architecture and API governance kind of deals with documenting Kubernetes architecture and patterns and path forward there, along with the API governance is everything from API reviews to deprecation policies and things like that. We're currently working on a shadowing program to help everybody, to help onboard new people to this. Also, our process and details around this are incredibly well documented. So if you're interested, you could go to the community repo in SIG architecture and actually see what it's like and what the review process is like. You can look at our board of what's in the review process. all of that stuff. But if you're interested in shadowing or getting involved in this process, please let us know. We can help you with that. Then there's the conformance definition. And here we work with the conformance working group to work out what is conformant Kubernetes. We hear about all of these different things. We hear about K3S and all these other projects that are conformant Kubernetes. What does that actually mean? This is the group that figures that out. And they document it, and they work with the people who do the testing and all of this stuff to work on the definition of conformance. And if you're interested in this, this is a group that meets regularly and talks through this stuff. We're happy to help onboard you to this as well. So if you're a newcomer and you don't know what to do or where to start, this is a place you can contribute. And we don't expect hardly anybody to know how this works. And so we will onboard and help you learn this and become successful in being part of this. And then our third sub-project is code organization. Are you interested in untangling Kubernetes, or dependency handling and all that stuff in vendor? This is an area that is mostly unstaffed. And we're looking to kickstart this effort and looking for people who want to figure out what the tasks are. Where should we go? How can we untangle things and make them cleaner? How do we work with the different people who've got different processes around pull requests and changes to Kubernetes and make sure those processes work together, as well as cleaning up our code base? If you're interested in helping do some of that work or helping to kickstart that effort, please reach out and we will help get you set up and empowered to do so. And so then the last slide is, here's who we are and how you find us. If you want to get involved, here's the chairs. You can reach out to any of us on it. Here's our homepage, our Slack channel, our mailing list. We're happy to talk to you in any of those places to try and help get you involved or answer questions that me talking all about this may not have covered. So that's it. I don't know if I've got time for questions. I did talk a bit today.
Yeah, you're a little bit over, but we did have a question from Aaron real quick. So I know
sure.
Architecture's cross-cutting, so let's take the time.
I just wanted to comment real quickly on the comment about the chairs of SIG Architecture like holding on to control. I feel like that mischaracterizes the situation where people attain that seniority by being super productive across the project, and then they kind of get eaten up by all of their responsibilities elsewhere. And so there has not been staff dedicated to taking the sheer volume of work that SIG Architecture is responsible for and chunking it up and breaking it down and making it approachable for newcomers who maybe aren't as senior. And so I feel like that's the change that's happening, but SIG Architecture has always been open to people showing up and doing the work. I just wanted to point to Dims as being very exemplary of that behavior, because though he does not have a chair in SIG Architecture, his opinion is extremely respected because he has showed up and done the work that is deemed important. The other point I'll just emphasize is that part of this discussion came about because it seemed as though SIG Architecture was turning into an anti-pattern of a clearinghouse for all technical decisions whatsoever, and that's not the goal. The goal is if it can't be resolved in individual SIGs, if it can't be resolved in a mailing list, consider the face-to-face, high bandwidth, valuable time the escalation point of last resort from a technical perspective.
All right, any other comments before we move on? All right, thanks, Matt. Next, we have SIG VMware with Steve Wong.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll start with what we did the last cycle. With the out-of-tree vSphere cloud provider, we've got a new release coming up at the end of this month, synchronized with 1.14. We're going to move this up from a label of alpha to a label of beta. And the new feature that will be in this upcoming version is support for availability zones. This is a concept within the vSphere hypervisor in bigger installations where it has its own tracking for availability zones. And there are also potential issues with storage that is mountable from some hypervisor nodes and not others. And we're upgrading support for those situations. In concert with the new cloud provider, there's also going to be an update to the CSI storage plugin. I know the CSI providers technically aren't part of Kubernetes per se, but we are going to have a coordinated release with a new version of this that is tracking some of the new features that are evolving over in the CSI spec. The third project is the Cluster API provider, and Cluster API project works on its own schedule. So the new version of the Cluster API is planned for release on March 29, and we'll have an alpha designation. Finally, we've already added Minikube support for the desktop versions of VMware Hypervisor, Fusion on the Mac, and Workstation on Linux and Windows. And these are available now in the latest release. Plans for upcoming cycles. We're going to plan to move that out-of-tree provider up from beta to a stable production release. I don't know if we'll make it in the 115 timeframe or the one after that, but we're looking at advancing the stability and feature set in that. And along with it, same thing for CSI. There are a number of features that they recently bumped the CSI spec to 1.1, and they're working on new features involving snapshot, volume resize, and potentially others. So the plan is that as we move towards a stable release of that, we'd move up to support these new CSI-enabled features. And then the Cluster API is going to track the general pattern of what's going on in Kubernetes project-wide with Cluster API. This is a link to related KEPs. They're in the deck, and the deck is linked in the notes for this meeting, so I'm not going to read these individually, but here they are for reference. Related working groups, there are meetings Wednesdays, monthly related to the vSphere cloud provider. There's a link to the notes and agenda there. The recordings are on YouTube. Cluster API also has recurring meetings with links to the notes and agenda and the YouTube videos. How can you contribute to this group? We've got a couple of help wanted bugs. Unfortunately, we're still working on getting a program set up for a mentorship program, but we don't have anything in that category now. Our meeting meets immediately after this one. There's a link there to the agenda and notes. The SIG chairs have decided that at this upcoming meeting, we're going to suggest moving it off by a week simply because we've been in conflict with SIG architecture. And I know some of the people would like to go to the SIG architecture Zoom meetings, but haven't been able to. So we're going to propose that we slip a week on our cycles. You see there the two chairs, myself and Fabio, and links to our Slack channel mailing list if you want to join. That's it for my presentation, if anybody's got any questions.
Going once, going twice. Has anyone seen Daniel Messer sign in yet for the demo? It looks like that's going to be a no-show. So with that, we'll move to our last SIG of the day, SIG multi-cluster. Irfan? He mentioned he was coming in Slack. Did anybody from SIG multi-cluster join? All right, that looks like a no, so I'm going to reschedule. Some quick announcements. The new Contributor Summit site is live at the URL. I've stuck that in the notes. The registration is supposed to go live by the end of day today, so keep an eye out for that. We also have a new channel in Slack. Oh, if you didn't notice, Slack is back. We sent a mail to the dev list. We have a new channel on Slack called #PR-reviews to help people find reviewers. So if you're finding yourself with ample extra time, please feel free to idle in there and people will be asking for reviews and things of that. Does anybody have anything else they would like to announce before we move on to the shout outs?
Yes, I do. I completely forgot to announce this during my segment. Hi, Aaron of SIG Beard again. So I'm your V114 lead, but it's time for us to start talking about who your V115 lead is. And so after talking around with a bunch of folks, I'm happy to announce that Claire Lawrence, the current enhancements leads for V114, has agreed to be the release lead for Kubernetes 115. And she has taken on as a shadow Tim Pepper to be one of the release lead shadows. So look for a PR from me to start the rest of that process shortly. I know there were some discussions about this while I was out in the release team meeting on Monday, but really looking forward to seeing the next team come together. Claire has been phenomenal throughout this whole process, and I can't wait to see what she does with the next release.
Awesome. And just a quick question, have you all opened the issue that is looking for new team members and whatnot, or is that the process?
Right. I need to get, I think that's what I'm talking about. I'll go sort that out and let you know. We're not at the point where we're looking at shadows yet. I think we're just looking to fill out leads first, but if the release lead is a little bit different in this case. So.
Okay, great. Anyone else before I move on to shout outs? All right. Code Ranger would like to shout out to Catherine for kicking butt on Slack automation to help out the admin team. And Mr. Bobby Tables would want to second that. Seriously, big shout out to Catherine for the stuff she's doing to make Slack a better place for us. So if you've noticed, Catherine has implemented a feature in our Slack now. If you see a comment that's bad and it should be flagged, you can right-click on it. And you can report that, and the admins and the Code of Conduct Committee will get notifications that something bad is happening on Slack. So it's just some of the work she's doing to make our Slack safer as we continue to enable more features and things like that. Aaron would like to shout out to Neolit123 for his investigative work on what appears to be a Golang 1.12 bug, and Liggett, Justin Santa Barbara, and Dims for the continued assists, and the Golang team for helping us get to Go 1.12.1 in time, sorry. And a shout out to Mike Arpaia for setting up and running the EU-friendly release team meetings, stepping in so much whenever Aaron isn't available, and keeping on top of all the things. So as usual, if we have a hash shout outs channel, if you see someone going above and beyond the call of duty, please feel free to mention them there so that we can give them the proper props. Since we had a SIG not show up and the demo not show up, we are way early on time, so I'm going to give you 28 minutes back. Any last comments before we call it? And awesome, everybody. We'll see everyone next week. Thank you.
Bye.